Good morning and welcome to our community affairs program that we call 30 Minutes. Today we bring you a portion of a ceremony honoring Jim Adcock on his retirement of 59 years in the radio industry in Union City. The ceremony took place at the Thunderbolt Broadcasting Studios in Union City. We hope you enjoy today's program.
The accomplishments that you have had, but more importantly, Jim, the many times that you have given above and beyond in our industry of radio. And we just want to celebrate you today. And I'm going to just begin by asking Terry Haley, who normally would be the what I would call the grand slam hitter. But Terry, I asked him to do something special. And in the conversation, which kind of went like this, I'll take care of it. So here he is today. I'll take care of it, Terry Haley. Mayor Haley, for those of you who haven't seen him.
Well, I've obviously known Jimmy for a long, long time. My first reckoning that there was of Jim Adcock was at Englewood Lake when my next door neighbor was Ed Fritz. Ed Fritz was the general manager of WENK, worked for the Dixie Network. And he, in 1965, handed me a reel-to-reel tape, and he said, his name is Adcock, wants to be a radio announcer. What do you think? So I listened to the tape. I said, well, he's got a great voice and all. Now, understand all this time that I was begging Mr. Fritz for a job. I mean, I was after him all the time. Every time I could catch him, I was looking for a job from Mr. Fritz. And so he hired Jim, and he said, I got a job for you too. You can mow my yard. So I mowed his yard every time I mowed ours. But that was the first reckoning I had of Jim Adcock. And then Jim went to work for the station. And the next thing that I remember about Jim was our group had a record out, 1966. And Jim was nice enough to play it. And we would call Jim, and he would play it on the air. We just thought that was great to hear the song on the radio. And we heard it on some other stations too, but it was really special to hear it here. Now I came to work for the Dixie Network and WENK in 1968. And interestingly enough, I wasn't very well received by these folks to start with because they had done away with their nighttime employee, Gary Powley, to hire me. And they terminated him. And interestingly enough, Gary became our manager for our Paris stations in later years. And Gary's a heck of a nice guy. But anyway, they were a little cool for a while, but they finally came around, and we had a lot of good times. As a matter of fact, J.R. Moore at the station told me one time, he said, at the Dixie Network, when I took the manager's job, they told me that the hardest thing to do would be to find people to work. Well, Jimmy and myself and Lou Rather run the radio station for 4 years, and he had never had any problem whatsoever finding anybody to work. Jimmy, you remember that commercial that had it said
Ooh, that Lou.
Ooh, that Lou, yeah.
Jim, can you say that again?
Ooh, that Lou.
Well, anyway, we had a good time there, and we did a lot of crazy things while I was there, and I won't bring all of those things up, but we did have a.
Fill it all.
Well, one of the things we did, do you remember the All Gone machine?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
How could I ever forget it?
I worked at night, and so we had a lot of fun with the kids who listened. We had a thing called All Gone machine, and if you wanted to get rid of somebody, you could call us up, and Jim had taken our big boom microphone, and we had lowered it into the toilet. And
we didn't get a drop of water.
That's
or
right.
Any liquid on it.
And we flushed the toilet and recorded that sound. And then we put some jungle noises with it too.
And some echo.
Yeah. And so the gist was when somebody called and wanted to get rid of somebody, we would just put them in the all gone machine and flush them away.
They were all gone for sure.
Another thing we did, and this is just a little bit off color, but I'm going to tell you anyway, that's what you wanted to hear. At the top of the hour at the radio station, there's we used to do our news live, so we would say, it's WENK Union City, it's 10 o'clock. And there was a little tone on there that went beep like that, like CBS News does that now. That shows you that it's the top of the hour. We recorded a fart. And we sped it up and sped it up and sped it up and sped it up until it sounded like beep. And for an entire year, every time the station did a station identification announcement, we would play that, and then we would think, "That's a fart, for heaven's sake!" We did that, and there's a whole bunch of other things. One of the things Jimmy did, we used to have a commercial load limit of 18 minutes per hour. And we had this program on the radio that we hated called Organ Melodies.
It's so lovely.
I love it. That's right. That's what I was going to say. And it was on from like 6:10 until 6:30 each night. And Jimmy found a way, and I came on at 6:30. So Jimmy found a way to play all 18 minutes of the commercials in that 20 minutes. And then I just had 30 minutes of music. So we didn't play much melody. And there was Jimmy didn't want to talk during the thing, so he pre-recorded stuff. That's stuff like, "That's so pretty, I just love that." Lots of stuff like that. I played it with. Anyway, that was fun. Another thing Jimmy did, on Sunday morning he went to church, and he also worked up till 10 o'clock. So Jimmy had a tape that he had recorded that was about 10 minutes long, which allowed him to leave the station before the next person got there, go home, take a shower, and get to church on time. And Vern Brooks was on to this, but he couldn't find out exactly how this was working. But the reason was because Jimmy hid the tape in the ceiling tile above the control room. So he'd bring it down from the ceiling tile and play it, and we had a lot of fun with that. And that's just there was a lot of shenanigans like that went on. I jotted down some more, but that's for the most part.
Mr. Fritz didn't know that?
Mr. Fritz was gone.
He was gone?
Yeah,
He went to Paducah.
He went to Paducah.
He took Ed Taylor with him.
Yeah, he took Ed Taylor with him. And Jimmy and I became friends outside of the radio station, too. As a matter of fact, we used to double date. And there was this...
Not with me.
There was this...
Not with me either, right?
I know where he's going here.
Yeah. So I'd worked at Dyersburg for a year, WTRO, and I had this girlfriend down there, and she had a friend whose name was Beverly. I guess you've heard this story before.
I have heard Beverly's story.
Well, we worked for the Dixie Network, and Jimmy, we'd gone to the old Marlboro Drive-In Theater, which is south of Dyersburg. If you remember coming home from Memphis, you could watch the movie there as you approached Dyersburg. We were at the drive-in. And so Jimmy was in the back seat with Beverly. And so he started saying, "Take me back to Dixie. Take me back to Dixie." And I said, "What's the matter with you?" He said, "She's talking matrimony." So we got him back to Dixie. The main thing, let me say about Jimmy was, as far as selling advertising, which was his specialty. Jimmy is Mr. Package. He sells packages. That's all he cares anything about it. A package is when you put a certain number of spots for a certain amount of money, and you don't. That's all you do. It just shows on the bill is $100. Okay. Jimmy's theory was never tell them what they're paying. No, don't let them. Don't do that. Instead of being 10 spots for $100, make it 17 spots for $87.36, and then they can't figure out how much it is. And when you send the bill out, just put $87.36 on it and let it go. I always wanted the spot cost on there. He didn't want the spot cost on there. So anyway, he said if they don't know what they're doing, then they'll come more apt to buy it. So, and it must have worked. That was a pretty good thing to do. Other than the radio station, Jimmy has played a big role in a lot of the public service agencies that we have around here, particularly the Union City J.C.'s, which he was president of. And he was a dedicated president of it, and he did all of the things that you should do to keep the club operating with as many members as we could get. But the main thing that he liked about the J.C.'s was he was really into Chimes for Charity. Matter of fact, I don't think there's anybody who ever was as dedicated to Chimes for Charity as Jimmy was. And we've talked about in recent years where we haven't thought that the younger folks are really understand what Chimes for Charity is all about sometimes. And Jimmy and I have offered to help them with that, and particularly Jimmy. And I don't think there's anybody that has worked on Chimes for Charity as much as Jimmy has. So, to make a long story short, I've enjoyed my working with Jimmy over a long period of time, and we've known each other since 1965. This is a key to the city, and I got this. Our keys to the city are on a keychain, and you can put this on your keychain, and it looks like a little key, and it's got the city's emblem and everything on it. So I'm going to give one to you, and I'm going to give one to Deb too, because she keeps you going.
Hey, there's Dale. This young man is Edward Dale Hill. He was named after Ed Fritz. His dad was Leon Hill, and he's pictured here. And he worked for WENK and other members of the Dixon Network for a number of years. And I told Dale, when Dale came back to Union City, we got reacquainted, and one of the things that Vern Brooks used to say was that there were 3 people from Dixon, Tennessee. Vern said that there were me, there was Frank Clement, and the other one was Leon Hill, because his home was Dixon, Tennessee. So thank you. Is that mine?
It's yours. Oh, and I'll leave it.
Well, thank you for coming. You were.
Thank you. Speaking of Vern Brooks, did you read that the sports for the Dairy Queen at 5:30 one afternoon?
Yes, I did. But Vern didn't think I did. But I could now.
Tell them why you know you did.
Here's the way that most folks could have known that I read the sports, because I was able to tell him several of the different stories that I read. And if I hadn't read them, I couldn't make it up. I said, here's exactly what I did. A story about this, then the break for the commercial, and then go back with closing out with the weather. But Vern never would acknowledge that I read that. It really made him mad.
Vern had gone to the Dairy Queen and had Bill Dixon listening to the radio so he could listen to Jim read the sports. And evidently Vern must have been listening to another station. we could never figure out what the deal was with that.
But it was, Vern was quite an individual.
To say the least.
And Vern's son now is in the broadcast industry and in the television business. He is the general manager of WBBJ in Jackson, and occasionally I talk to Mark.
Jim, we have some people that don't know they're going to talk, and some people that I know you want to hear from. And Wilma, I'd like for you to have a few words, if you can step out where we can all see you, because you and Jim spent very close proximities of desk, needless to say, and became great friends through the years. So Wilma,
she's a sweetheart.
Well, yes, we did. There was times though when Jim would turn in all those packages, and sometimes I would go in there and, Mr. H, what is he doing today? But Jim was a jewel. He was precious. Jim, I enjoyed working with you. I enjoy your family. I appreciate you, and God bless you on your retirement.
Thank you, Wilma. We love you and your family, and your mother is a wonderful lady.
She can cook.
Amen.
I was looking around here of the people that Jim has either worked with or done business with. Here's a fellow right here. I promised I wouldn't ask him to talk, but I know who he is. Y'all come in up here for just a second. And Hadley, everybody know Hadley. If you don't, Hadley Malone. I just want to give Hadley a moment to speak about Jim, because I know how much he cares about him and done business with him for a long time. I'm sorry, it's your turn.
I'm glad to do so. Mr. Jim came to us a long time ago, and I was not sold on radio advertisement, and but Mr. Jim was persistent, and I've always enjoyed number one that he has a unique voice that grabs your attention when you're driving down the road, and he gave personal endorsements to us, and he just always I think at one time, I believe, Mr. Jim, you not also did a little bit on in the insurance business, a little bit on the side, a long time ago.
Yes, I was in the insurance business.
Just for a short while or something? I think that's when, like 30 years ago. And I remember talking with him at that time when I was first getting started. And he probably doesn't remember that. But I would go around and I would talk to some of the ones that have been in the business for a long time. And just to get some information and to get some guidance and try to learn from those who've been there before me. And he was always generous with his time. And down the line, he doesn't probably remember that. But afterwards, it meant a lot to me, and one of the main reasons why we wanted to do business with the radio station. So, thank you. Appreciate you.
Mike Risley, your turn.
Well, Jim and I have known each other for a long time. We went to high school together. The biggest thing, I guess, about Jim was he was 2 years older than I am, and we sat at the same study hall table back in that time. And Jim was in the process of going through to get his license for the radio. And so instead of studying study hall, I would ask him radio questions. And we did that forever, and I don't think Mr. Miller or anybody else ever caught us for talking. But I learned a lot about radio stuff at that time, too, asking Jim all the questions, and he got them all right.
Where's Judge Smith?
He's back there. Since you're at the microphone, go right ahead, and you have a few words here for Jim. You might want to tell this group who you are.
Okay. Jim's picture hangs right next to one of the greatest entertainers ever in the rock and roll, Elvis Presley, in my store. He hangs right beside it.
Thank you.
It says, "To my friend Lloyd, Jim."
John Warner, I know you. I'll just touch up and let you start.
My recollections go way back to when we first came to town, and I got involved in the JCs, and Jim was Mr. JC. He was everything that was going on in the JCs he was involved in, and he was totally dedicated, and those were wonderful days, and I remember them so well and appreciate very much your contribution to our community through the JCs and through your professional work as well. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Hart.
Jim and Crystal Crane, who's at the courthouse, they have never met until today. Is that not right?
That's true.
Do you have a story you want to share with us?
He always calls, and you, "Hey, Crystal," and you know who it was. His voice, right? I know who it is. Mm-hmm. "Hey, I can't come up there, but can you help me and my wife out with any type of paperwork?" So never come in the office. We always go to the conference, right?
We did.
We did. But so maybe now that you're retired, you can walk into the courthouse and see us. You can see where I work at.
I'll come by for a tour.
Okay, I can do a tour.
Judge Smith, come in real quick. Yes, sir.
Well, Jim Adcock has the radio voice. I mean, I think we all, if you've ever heard it, we all have. That's just what radio should be. I don't know if that's because some people say they look better on radio, Jim, or not. Anyway, but Jim told me a story just a few minutes ago when I came in, so I'm going to kind of take credit for Jim's long tenure in radio, and I probably ought to let him tell it, but he said that as a high school student, he was able to, interview's not the right word, audition, Terry, for the radio station in Dyersburg. And y'all, most of
DJ show.
DJ show, and most of y'all don't remember this, but those of us that are aging do. When you could only go to Dyersburg by going through O'Brien, and my dad and Pee Wee Thomas had TNS Sport at the time, and Jim said that he got this great opportunity of a lifetime to go down and audition on the radio station in Dyersburg, and they were headed from Union City, I guess, to Dyersburg, and lo and behold, his parents' car broke down. And so they ended up at TNS Ford in O'Brien, and he said my dad and Pee Wee gave his mother and daddy a loaner vehicle to make it all the way to Dyersburg so that Jim could do his first live on-the-air radio presentation. So y'all can thank me for Jim. Oh, my daddy and mother.
Thank you, Jimmy. That's a true story.
I never heard it until today. So, and I've known Jim for as long as I can remember. So, thank you for sharing that.
You know, we have two pillars of this community, maybe three or four more, I would say, to be honest. But Bill Latimer, who has been in the broadcasting business for a number of years also. But, Mr. Bill, would you like to say a word or two?
Well, Jim does have one of the best radio voices I have ever heard. And my part with Jim is just listening to him on the radio. Chimes for Charity was a big time, and just many other things. And we just do thank you for your 50-year service.
Thank you, Mr. Bill.
I would honestly tell you, Debbie, Jim, that Charles Choate, we were planning to do something around and some of you may know this and some of you don't, but KYTN this year is going to be how old, Jim?
75.
And when you take we went on the air in 1974, and if you take 74, subtract it. Now, Mr. Bill's already gotten those numbers down, but we're having two anniversaries this year, all in one. 50th anniversary of KYTN, which went on the air in 1974, and we hadn't had this conversation yet, but Jim was one of the original morning people at that radio station, as was I, and of course Woody Cobb, Larry Doxey, guy that we all loved, and you, Jim. That was our lineup during the course of the day, and that goes back 50 years in broadcasting. So you take 74 and you take the 9, so you know what the year that Jim actually got started in broadcasting. And of course WQAK is celebrating its 30th anniversary, so we're doing 80 years this year. But Charles, we were talking about, so Charles said, we got to get this going. And that's how Charles talked. We got to get this going. And Charles, I want to take just a moment and let you say a few words, because you and Jim have established a relationship that no one could ever understand, or much less would ever know, unless you shared it with them.
We talked in code, but I really enjoyed getting to meet you, Jim, to know you. 59 years for you. How many years for you, Paul?
You got Terry over
53.
here.
All right. Somebody get the phone out. 59, 53, Terry?
67, whatever that is. So
Yeah.
that's 33 plus 24, whatever.
Let's figure that out.
57.
How many years of radio experience are we? Yeah.
57 plus 59 plus.
It's amazing
Yeah.
what we're looking at here. But I heard you on the radio when I was younger, and Terry Haley. Matter of fact, when I started working here, I got to meet Terry, got to meet Larry Doxey. I actually went home one day, went around the corner to my mom's house, and I said, "You ain't gonna believe this. I met Terry Haley and Larry Doxey." She was so happy. Really, you got to meet them? I said, "I did. I really did." I'm so proud to meet you, and I'm going to miss, because I'll be in there working and typing. That door open, Jim would come in, and I just turn around and say, "You got me a news tip?" Because he always knew what was going on. He'll say, "The police cars went down by safety." And he said it wasn't just one; it was 2 or 3. So that's something you might better check out. So there's one tip that you can still call me from home if you got tips. I sure would take them. But I sure enjoyed working with you, and I'm so proud of you. At your success and what you've done for so many people, not only in radio, as they said, but in the community. Because community spirit and community volunteerism, as I know well, is kind of faded over the years. People don't have that drive like they used to. And I know you've touched many people, and you've done a lot for a lot of people. We sure appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you, Charles.
Mayor, can you take a few moments here for a second?
Be glad to.
Right.
I'm going to do the personal part first, and then I'll do my mayoral part.
Oh, by the way, I didn't mention, y'all probably don't even know this. This guy worked at KYTN when he was little. How many years do you have there?
I was there about 2 years.
2 years? We'll add that to the number.
Yeah, add that to the number. Yeah, when I was a little boy, after hearing Terry Haley on the radio and Jim on the radio, I used to take my record player at home and a tape recorder, and I would make my own radio show to play. And I knew I wanted to be in broadcasting, and my cousin, Mark Ward, being good friends with Terry, told him that I had an interest in that. So Sunday night after church, Terry would go to the Wink, and I'd go up there with him, and he taught me how to spin the records and how to do the timing just right. And he basically showed me how to become a young disc jockey. And he didn't have an opening there, and so at that time, KYTN was known as WALR. The studio was out on the old Fulton Highway, and so they needed somebody out there to work on weekends and some later nights. And of course, I was just almost old enough to drive. I had my permit. So I think that puts me about 1970, late 75 or 76, not long after that opened out there. And so I would go out there and work late nights and on the weekends. And, of course, Jim worked there, Larry worked there. And I don't know if y'all swapped out some of who was kind of in charge of the programming and setting it up. But, we had certain blocks we played certain kind of records.
Right.
And I had certain people that listened every night that I was there on the weekends, and they'd call and make a request for certain songs. And so there would be those songs, I'd play them repeatedly on my shifts because they wanted to hear them. And I think apparently I played some of them more than Jim or Larry liked for me to do sometimes. And so what happened was, and Terry mentioned that you hiding that tape in the ceiling. Well, so I was looking one night for one of these songs, and I couldn't find it. It was gone. But I knew that there was a place back there in the transmitter room where there was a stash of records, and I went back there and found the one that I was looking for. And I don't know if you hid it back there or Larry hid it back there, but I found it. And I played it anyway, and so I made the person, listening happy. And but I always, yes, of course, that was important. But I always enjoyed working with you, and I've always had such respect for you, and I appreciate you so much. And then Debbie was instrumental, and when our son Stephen is autistic, and she played a part in his education through the years. Very thankful. Mm-hmm. Always be thankful for that, and Jim, just thankful for our friendship through the years.
Yes, sir.
And now I want to get to the mayoral part, okay? I have a document here. It says it's a mayor's proclamation. Whereas reaching a major milestone provides an opportunity for celebration and reflection upon one's lifetime, and whereas the year 2024 is a special time for Jim Adcock because this year marks 59 years that he has been in broadcasting. And whereas Jim Adcock, through his incredible and unmistakable voice, has come into the homes and vehicles of countless individuals and families through the airwaves over the course of nearly 6 decades as a radio personality. And whereas Thunderbolt Radio and this community have joined together on this day to acknowledge Jim Adcock for his faithful and exemplary work, now therefore I, Steve Carr, Mayor of Obion County, Tennessee, do hereby honor Jim Adcock on the occasion of his retirement from broadcasting by proclaiming March 26, 2024 as Jim Adcock Day throughout Obion County.
All right. Come here, Jim, we got something for you, buddy. Again, just to show our appreciation, this is from all of us here, from the top to the bottom, the owners and all. To have this, it says Jim Adcock, the golden voice of radio for 59 years, celebrating your retirement, March 26, 2024. That's presented by the radio station here, and put that on your mantle and look at it every day and enjoy it. And it's all true words. The golden voice. That's what everybody's been saying the whole time. And that concludes this week's 30 Minutes program. We hope you enjoyed today's show. And, of course, we invite you to tune in again next week at this same time as we bring you topics and information of importance to our community. From all of us here at Thunderbolt Broadcasting, until we meet again next week, I'm Charles Choate.
You've been listening to 30 Minutes, a community affairs program on Thunderbolt Radio. You can listen to this broadcast and others anytime by visiting thunderboltradio.com and following the Thunderbolt Radio and Digital YouTube page. Thanks for listening.